Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Yes, always a pleasure.
So this time we're getting festive. It is December after all.
It is December, it's the season.
And you know what that means? We're diving into the history of Christmas traditions.
Traditions.
Exactly. And let me tell you, we got a ton of research on this one.
Oh, yes.
And I was so surprised by some of this stuff, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see where some of these things come from and how long they've been around.
It's going to blow your mind. Get ready for some serious Christmas trivia to impress your friends.
Exactly. You'll be the hit of the holiday party.
So let's start with something I think we're all familiar with, the Christmas tree.
The Christmas tree.
Everyone loves a good Christmas tree. I mean, I know I do, but
Of course, yeah.
did you ever think about where that tradition comes from?
You know, I've always kind of wondered about that because
It's not like it's in the Bible or anything. Right.
Right, it's not like, the nativity scene with the Christmas tree.
Exactly. So where does it come from?
Well, it actually goes way back to ancient pagan festivals during the winter solstice.
Pagan festivals. Okay, so not Christmas at all, really.
Not Christmas at all, but it was the darkest time of year, right? And those evergreen trees, they stayed green all winter long.
So it was a symbol of...
They were a symbol of like hope and life when everything else was kind of dying and fading away.
I like that symbolism, like even in the darkest times, there's still life and hope.
Exactly. And light, and they're strong, those trees.
Yeah, they can survive anything. A little snow, a little ice.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we got these pagan festivals celebrating evergreen trees.
Right.
But how do we get from there to like tinsel and ornaments and,
Well, fast forward a few centuries to the 16th century in Germany.
Okay.
Christians start bringing trees into their homes and they're decorating them.
They're decorating them with what, like tinsel?
Not tinsel yet, but they were using apples to symbolize the Garden of Eden.
Oh, interesting. So there's that tie-in with Christianity.
Right, bringing in that symbol.
It's like a merging of two traditions.
Exactly. Traditions evolve over time. They take on new meanings.
So we've got Germany, 16th century. They got their tree apples. When did we get to America? When did we get the American Christmas tree?
Well, we can thank German immigrants for bringing that tradition over to the U.S. in the 1800s.
Okay.
They really helped popularize it.
So if it weren't for them, we might be celebrating around a Yule log or something.
Maybe a different kind of tradition.
And it really makes you think, when you look at your tree this year,
Yeah.
does knowing this history change how you see it?
It definitely adds a layer of depth, I think. Knowing that it's not just a decoration. It's the symbol of resilience and hope that's been celebrated for centuries.
Like a link to the past.
It is. It's a connection to those who came before us.
Okay, enough about trees. Let's get to the big guy himself,
Oh, yes.
Santa Claus.
Kid.
I gotta admit, I always thought Santa was like a modern invention.
Yeah.
Like some marketing gimmick.
Right.
But turns out his story is way more interesting than that.
Oh, yeah. Santa's got a long history.
So spill the tea.
It all starts with a real person. St. Nicholas, a 4th century bishop.
A real person.
A real person. He lived in what's now Turkey, and he was known for his generosity, especially towards children.
So was he like going down chimneys and delivering presents?
Not quite, but the stories about him are pretty amazing. Like this one story about him helping a poor family.
Right.
He secretly gave them gold coins by dropping them down the chimney.
He just dropped them down the chimney.
Down the chimney, and you know where those coins landed?
I'm intrigued.
In stockings that were drying by the fire.
Whoa, wait a minute. So that's where the Christmas stocking tradition comes from.
That's the story. That's the legend.
That's amazing. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Okay, but so we got this real guy, St. Nicholas.
Right.
Very generous, loves kids.
Uh-huh.
How do we get from there to like flying reindeer and a jolly belly and...
Right. Well, it takes a few centuries, a little bit of folklore, and some literary magic.
Literary magic.
Yeah. In the 1820s, a poem was published, Clement Clarke Moore's "'Twas the Night Before Christmas."
Ah, classic.
A classic. And that poem really gave us this image of Santa in a sleigh with reindeer delivering presents to all the good children.
So it's like he took those old stories about St. Nicholas and gave them a magical makeover.
Exactly. He created this iconic image that we all know and love.
And then, of course, you can't forget about Coca-Cola.
Oh, yeah. Coca-Cola really cemented that image in our minds. The red suit, the jolly belly, the twinkling eyes.
They really branded Santa, didn't they?
They did. They did a great job.
And it's interesting to think about how that image has evolved over time, right? And what that says about our changing values.
Absolutely. Are we more focused on the material side of Christmas now, or is it still about that same spirit of generosity that St. Nicholas embodied?
It's a good question to ponder.
It is. It's something to think about.
Okay, so we talked about the tree, we talked about Santa. But there's another big part of Christmas that we can't forget about.
Presents.
Presents, gifts, giving gifts.
Gift giving.
And that tradition also has some pretty interesting origins.
Oh, yeah, both religious and secular.
Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me.
So on the religious side, we have the story of the three wise men
Right.
bringing gifts to the baby Jesus, gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Fancy gifts.
Very fancy gifts. And they weren't just random presents, they were symbolic offerings representing Jesus' kingship, divinity, and sacrifice.
Wow, so those gifts were packed with meaning.
Layers of meaning.
But what about those of us who aren't celebrating the religious side of Christmas?
Right.
Is there a gift-giving tradition for us too?
Absolutely. Even in ancient Rome, they were exchanging gifts during Saturnalia.
Saturnalia.
It was a winter solstice festival, a time for feasting and merrymaking and gift
Frequently,
giving.
humans have always loved giving each other presents, no matter the reason.
It seems so. It's this universal impulse.
But it's interesting to think about how that tradition has changed over time, right?
It has in the past. Gifts were often practical items, things people needed to survive.
Like a new plow or something?
Yeah, it's exactly something useful. But now it's more about expressing love and appreciation for each other.
Yeah, it's like gift giving has evolved from a necessity to a love language.
It's about strengthening those bonds, showing people that we care.
Well said.
Thank you.
Our deep divers, welcome back for more Christmas tradition tales.
Glad to be back.
Last time we covered trees, Santa, and even some mistletoe smooching, but there's so much more to uncover.
There is. We barely scratched the surface.
So let's keep digging into those holiday rituals.
All right, let's do it.
So this next tradition, I gotta say I'm a little obsessed with it.
Oh, yeah.
I love them. I'm talking about Christmas wreaths.
Wreaths.
You know those evergreen circles we hang on our doors every December?
It's a classic.
But why a circle? Why evergreen? I mean, I never really thought about it.
Well, those wreaths, they have a long history packed with symbolism.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It goes all the way back to ancient Rome and Greece.
Wow, ancient times.
Back then, wreaths represented victory, honor, even eternal life.
Eternal life from a wreath.
Well, that circular shape, right? It symbolized the cycle of life, the idea that things are always beginning and ending, always turning back on themselves.
I can see that like the year coming full circle.
Exactly. And for Christians, that circle also took on a special meaning.
Okay, how so?
It became a symbol of Christ's suffering and his eventual triumph over death.
So those evergreen branches represent everlasting life.
Exactly. And that circular shape symbolizes the crown of thorns Jesus wore.
Wow, so much meaning packed into one simple decoration.
It's true, those wreaths are full of symbolism.
All right, let's switch gears to something a little more sparkly.
Okay.
Christmas lights.
Ah, yes, the twinkling lights.
I love them, but I've never stopped to think about where they came from.
Well, this one's a bit more recent than wreaths.
Okay.
But just as fascinating, we have to go back to the 17th century and a familiar name, Martin Luther.
Wait a minute, Martin Luther, the Protestant Reformation guy?
That's the one.
What does he have to do with Christmas lights?
Well, the story goes that Luther was walking home one winter night, and he was just mesmerized by the stars twinkling through the evergreen trees.
Okay, I can picture that it's beautiful.
It is, and he wanted to recreate that magical sight at home to bring that sense of awe and wonder indoors.
So what did he do?
He brought a tree inside and put small candles on the branches
He put candles on a tree.
to mimic that starry night sky.
I mean, it sounds beautiful, but also kind of dangerous.
A bit of a fire hazard, yes.
Thank goodness for electricity.
Right.
So when did we make that switch from candles to electric lights?
That happened in the late 19th century. Edward Johnson, an associate of Thomas Edison,
Okay.
created the first string of electric Christmas lights.
Wow.
He hand-wired 80 red, white, and blue bulbs and strung them around his Christmas tree.
80 bulbs. That must have been a sight to behold.
It was definitely a novelty at the time.
Okay, so from candles to electric lights, technology really changed the game.
It did, but some things stay the same.
Like what?
Like the desire to spread holiday cheer.
Right. And you know what's a classic way to do that? Christmas cards.
Ah, yes, those little greetings of joy.
I love getting those handwritten notes in the mail. It feels so personal in this digital age.
It's a special tradition, and it all started in Victorian England.
Of course it did. Those Victorians loved their traditions.
They did. And it all began with a busy businessman named Sir Henry Cole.
Yeah.
He had so many friends and acquaintances that he couldn't keep up with writing personal holiday letters to everyone.
I feel that struggle sometimes.
Right, so he commissioned an artist to create a card with a festive scene and a simple greeting.
The original Christmas card.
Exactly, and they were a hit. People loved the idea of sending these pre-printed greetings.
So it's like the Victorian version of a mass email.
Exactly, a time-saving hack.
But when did America get in on this Christmas card action?
That happened a few decades later thanks to a German immigrant named Louis Prang.
Yeah,
He used a special printing process called chromolithography
como
to
lithographer.
create colorful, detailed Christmas cards that were more affordable.
So he's like the American Christmas card king.
He played a big role in popularizing them in the US.
And now we've got all kinds of cards, from those simple greetings to those elaborate pop-up designs.
It's amazing how traditions evolve over time.
It is. But you know what else I love about Christmas? Curling up with a good book.
Oh, yes, me too.
Those classic Christmas stories have a special magic to them.
They do, and that tradition of reading Christmas stories aloud also has a fascinating history.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, picture 19th century England. More and more people are learning to read, and there's this growing demand for books that capture the Christmas spirit.
Makes sense.
And this is when we see the publication of some of those iconic Christmas stories we still love today,
Like what?
like Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Clement Clarke Moore's A Visit from St. Nicholas.
Oh, the classics.
They capture the themes of generosity, redemption, and the importance of family and community.
And they were perfect for reading aloud.
Exactly. Families would gather together and share these stories, making them a central part of their Christmas celebrations.
It's like those stories brought people together.
They did. They created a shared experience.
Okay, but Christmas isn't just about cozy gatherings and family time.
Right.
It's also about giving back,
Absolutely.
spreading that holiday cheer beyond our immediate circles.
And that tradition of charitable giving during the Christmas season has deep roots.
I'm not surprised.
It goes all the way back to St. Nicholas.
Of course, he's like the patron saint of generosity.
He was known for his compassion and his desire to help those less fortunate,
And that example has inspired countless acts of kindness throughout the centuries.
especially during the Christmas season.
It's heartwarming to think about all the good that happens during this time of year.
It is, and it's not just about grand gestures or donating large sums of money. Even small acts of kindness can make a difference.
Like what?
Donating to a local food bank, volunteering at a shelter, simply checking in on an elderly neighbor.
Simple acts of kindness can go a long way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially during a time when many people are struggling.
It's all about embodying that spirit of giving.
Exactly.
And you know, it makes me wonder, what will the Christmas traditions of the future look like?
That's a good question.
Will we still be hanging wreaths and reading A Christmas Carol 100 years from now?
It's hard to say, but I think those core values, those desires to celebrate, to connect, to give back, those are timeless.
Traditions might evolve, but that underlying human spirit, that's what endures.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe we'll even create some new traditions.
Right. Traditions are always changing.
They are, but at their heart, they're about connection, finding meaning and joy in shared experiences.
Well said. Welcome back, Deep Divers. Ready for the final installment of our Christmas traditions extravaganza.
I am ready.
Oh, I am. I'm feeling extra festive after all those history lessons.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much there is to learn about these traditions we take for granted.
Right. It's like a whole hidden world behind those twinkling lights and candy canes.
And we've saved some of the most fun traditions for last.
Okay, hit me with it.
Let's talk about Christmas crackers.
Oh, yes, those paper tubes that explode with a bang.
Exactly. They always add a bit of drama to the dinner table.
As a kid, I was both excited and terrified of those things.
I know, right? The anticipation, the bang, the little treasures inside, it's all part of the fun.
So where did these come from? Was it like some mad scientist in his lab trying to invent the perfect party favor?
Not quite a lab, but it did involve some creativity. We have to go back to Victorian England and a confectioner named Tom Smith.
Okay, another Victorian invention. Those folks were full of surprises.
They were. Now, Tom was selling bonbons wrapped in twists of paper, but sales weren't great.
So he needed a way to spice things up.
Exactly. And he got this brilliant idea to add a crackle to his treats.
A crackle. Oh, like a sound effect.
Yeah, he incorporated a chemical compound that would make a snapping sound when the paper was pulled apart.
So basically, bonbons with a built-in bang.
Exactly. And people loved the novelty of it. It wasn't just a treat, it was an experience.
I bet those Victorians were all about those fancy crackers.
Oh, they were. And over time, they added all those extras, the paper hats, the little toys, the corny jokes.
It's all part of the tradition.
Absolutely.
Okay, but let's move on to another tradition that's all about anticipation and those little daily doses of joy. I'm talking about Advent calendars.
Ah, yes, the countdown to Christmas.
I remember as a kid, it was the best part of December getting to open those little doors and find a treat every day.
It's a tradition that's all about building excitement.
So where did this come from?
It started in 19th century Germany, but back then it was a lot simpler.
Okay.
German Protestants would mark the days leading up to Christmas with chalk lines on their doors or by lighting candles.
So no chocolate Santas or Legos behind those doors.
Not quite, but the idea was the same, to mark the passing of time and create a sense of anticipation.
Each day brought them closer to Christmas.
Exactly.
So when did those little doors enter the picture?
In the early 1900s, a German publisher named Gerhard Lang created the first printed advent calendar with little pictures that could be pasted onto a cardboard backing one for each day.
Okay, so from chalk marks to pictures,
Yeah.
we're getting closer to the modern advent calendar.
And then it wasn't long before someone had the brilliant idea to add chocolate.
Chocolate makes everything better.
It does, and now you can find advent calendars filled with all sorts of treats, from gourmet chocolates to beauty products to tiny toys.
It's like a daily dose of holiday indulgence.
Exactly.
Okay, but we can't talk about Christmas treats without mentioning those iconic red and white swirls.
Ah, yes, the candy cane.
I always thought those were like an ancient Christmas tradition.
Nope, actually a relatively recent invention.
Seriously, I had no idea.
Those red and white stripes and the hooked shape we know and love didn't appear until the early 1900s.
Wow. So before that, were they just plain white sugar sticks?
Exactly.
Huh. So how did they get so festive?
There's a story that a choir master in Germany wanted a way to keep his young singers quiet during long Christmas services.
Okay, I can relate to that struggle.
So he bent those straight sticks into a hook shape to resemble a shepherd's crook, symbolizing the shepherds who visited baby Jesus.
So he was like a Christmas innovator.
He was trying to be practical and symbolic at the same time.
But what about those red stripes? Where did those come from?
That part's a bit of a mystery. No one knows for sure when or why they became standard, but it probably happened sometime in the early 20th century.
Well, whatever the reason, it worked. Those red and white swirls are pure Christmas magic.
They are.
Well, we've journeyed through centuries of history, unwrapped the stories behind some of our most beloved traditions, and maybe even discovered a few things we didn't know.
It's been quite a deep dive.
It has. And as we wrap up, I think it's important to remember that these traditions aren't just about the past. They connect us to the present and to each other. They remind us of those values of generosity, hope, family, and community that are so important, especially during the holiday season.
Absolutely, and they're constantly evolving, taking on new meanings as we carry them forward.
So as you gather with your loved ones this Christmas, take a moment to appreciate those traditions, the twinkling lights, the carols, the candy canes, and don't be afraid to create some new traditions of your own.
Traditions are meant to be shared, adapted, and passed down through generations.
Happy holidays, everyone!